The Opel Corsa A is Opel's first true modern super mini car, introduced in late 1982. It targeted urban and budget buyers who needed a small, practical, and economical car, and it was built mainly in Zaragoza in Spain. And basically, the Corsa A competed directly with other European super minis of the 1980s, such as the Ford Fiesta, Renault 5, Fiat Uno, and Volkswagen Polo. It combined compact and size, straightforward mechanics, and a no nonsense interior to become a commercial success for Opel. It was positioned smaller than the Opel Kadett, and basically, as said before, was the smallest car Opel offered. And during its launch in 1982 to 1983, the first model appeared in select markets in late 1982 and rolled out broadly throughout 1983. Early models were available as basic 3-door hatchbacks, 5-door hatchbacks, and market-specific small saloons called the DRs. And later you also got a 5-door edition, basically responding to consumer demand for practicality. Basically, therefore, a 5-door variant was introduced a few years after the launch, although I couldn't find specifically what exact date was. The car received a small facelift in 1987, which was a light but visible facelift, arriving in September 1987. The update included a small reworked grille and front end styling to create a unified modern face across the entire range of Opel vehicles, and also some small interior improvements and progressive updates to the engine lineup were made. And basically in 1990, the major facelift appeared, as this was a big change made to the front end of the car, making the Corsa A less outdated, including different lights, bumpers, and a different grille, and basically a completely different dashboard and interior. The Corsa A has a compact, upright Supermini silhouette that favors interior space and visibility. Early examples show sharper bumpers and a more classic early 1980s face, and the 1987 and 1990 facelift softened the front end with a redesigned grille and lamp surrounds for a contemporary look. The short overhangs, tall greenhouse, and upright rear create a practical and basically a very easy to see package, easy to maneuver in town while still offering usable cargo space for such a small car. Wheel sizes, trim, and bumpers varied by trim and the market, as for example, the GT or the GSI had different bumpers than, for example, a basic Corsa A. And inside, the Corsa A is a utilitarian and functional vehicle. The dashboard layout is simple, with clear gauges, logical switchgear, and modest storage, and also the seating is upright with generous headroom for this class, being comfortable for 2 adults in the front and 2 children or shorter adults in the rear on short journeys. And also trim levels range from very basic, with, for example, vinyl or simple cloth with manual windows to better equipped versions with a superior upholstery, a tachometer, and improved radio. The facelift updated materials and trim fit and finished modestly, and especially with the facelift, the car really improved in quality and features. Throughout its whole life, the Corsa A was also available with a lot of small petrol engines and diesel engines that made the car very suitable, very eco-friendly, and fuel consumption-wise was also very good. The smallest engine that actually was not available in the Kadett was the 1.0S, and basically this engine was almost available throughout the entire production period, as this had 45 horsepower and 68 newton meters of torque, having a 0 to 100 time of 19.5 seconds and a top speed of 140 kilometers an hour, all while having an average fuel consumption of 6.1 to 6.6 liters per 100 kilometers. This basically was more like a city engine, although it could even be used on highways, but as seen from the top speed, it really is my recommendation for the people to use this engine basically in cities and such. Another engine you did not have in the slightly bigger Kadett was the 1.2N. This was a normal petrol engine and had 45 horsepower, 80 newton meters of torque, being a big increase in torque in comparison to the 1.0S. also having a better 0 to 100 time of this time 17.5 to 18 seconds and a slightly higher top speed of 143 km an hour. Because this engine also was bigger, the fuel consumption also was slightly higher at 6.8 to 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers. An engine that was in the Cadet was the 1.2S. This had basically the same power output of 54 horsepower and 19 Nm of torque, giving the car a 0 to 100 time slightly lower than in the Cadet of 16 seconds and a top speed of 152 km an hour. The fuel consumption was slightly better than with the 1.2N because this engine used super petrol, and this was 6.4 to 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers. You also had the 1.3N of normal petrol, producing 59 horsepower, 96 Nm of torque, giving the car a 0 to 100 time of 15 seconds and a top speed of 155 km an hour, all while having an average fuel consumption quite decent of 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers. And of this engine you also had the 1.3S, this time not having 75 horsepower like in the Cadet, but having 69 horsepower, but having the same torque amount of 101 Nm, giving the car a 0 to 100 time very decent of 13.5 seconds and a top speed of 161 km an hour, all while having a very good fuel consumption of 6.5 to 6.6 liters per 100 kilometers, actually being somewhat even more fuel efficient than the 1.2S in some cases. Later you also had the 1.3i, which was a fuel injected engine. This wasn't as powerful as the 1.3S, but basically sometimes could be more fuel efficient. This time however it wasn't, as it had 59 horsepower, 96 Nm of torque and 0 to 100 time of 15 seconds, and a top speed also lower than the 1.3S at 155 km an hour. It wasn't as fuel efficient as the 1.3S, but it was more modern, as it had a fuel consumption of 6.8 liters per 100 kilometers. And basically after the facelift, a lot of Opel engines basically had the pistons bored out a little bit. For example with the 1.3i, which later became the 1.4i, having slightly more power, of this time the same 59 horsepower but 103 Nm, giving the car a better 0 to 100 time of this time 14.5 seconds, and also actually remaining the same top speed of 155 km an hour, but having a lower fuel consumption of 6.7 liters per 100 kilometers. You also had basically the more powerful 1.4S, as said before, basically this time being a bored out 1.3S, having 71 horsepower, 108 Nm of torque, giving the car actually a very decent 0 to 100 time of 11.4 seconds and a top speed of 168 km an hour, all while having a fuel consumption of 6.5 liters per 100 km on average. After that, basically the more faster variant was the 1.6 GSI, and the top of the line GSI had 101 horsepower, 135 Nm of torque and a 0 to 100 time of only 9.5 seconds, basically being a bit slower than the Cadet E. Top speed wise it was actually also very high at 188 to 190 km an hour, and actually this engine still was very fuel efficient of only 7.2 liters per 100 kilometers. In the Cadet E you had the 1.6D, but since the Corsa A was slightly smaller, Opel used a 1.5 diesel, a slightly smaller engine. This had 50 horsepower and 90 Nm of torque, giving the car a 0 to 100 time actually not that terrible as in the Cadet E of 17.5 seconds and a top speed of 151 km an hour, all while having an average fuel consumption of only 5 liters per 100 kilometers. Basically later in the Cadet E you also had the 1.7D and also the 1.5 turbo diesel. The exact same engine, the 1.5 turbo diesel taken from Isuzu, was also available in the Corsa, as this had 66 horsepower, 132 Nm of torque, giving the car a 0 to 100 time of 13 seconds and a very high top speed of 166 km an hour, all while having a very good fuel consumption of only 5.1 liters per 100 kilometers. And basically some Special versions, as said before, were the GSI, which basically was a 1.6 liter injection engine, basically being the performance flagship, offering multi-point fuel injection, firmer suspension and sport trim, as the GSI provided typical hot hatch performance for the class. And you later also had coach-built convertibles and spiders, basically being made in small numbers of cabrio and spider conversions, being created by independent coach builders. Between 1982 and 1993, approximately 3 to 3.1 million units were sold, and basically the predecessor wasn't really there, as it just filled the gap left by smaller Opel models such as the Cadet City or the Vauxhall Chevette family in certain markets, and it basically just filled this void. But it did have a successor, the Opel Corsa B, which was launched in 1993. Key competitors were, as said before, the Ford Fiesta, the Renault 5 and later the Renault Clio, also the Fiat Uno, and the Volkswagen Polo, which all were direct rivals in the European Super Mini segment. Thank you for watching this video. In order to be able to upload more videos in the future, please consider becoming a member of my channel or sending a super thanks on this video. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Don't forget to check out this playlist with many interesting videos covering various parts of the automotive industry, and I will see you in the next video.